Cool. Let's talk about episode 5, which is data layer discipline. What this basically means is any component in your app does not ever touch fetch. And by fetch, I mean Axios, fetch, XHR, anything to do with API calls. No components care about how the data comes. All they should care about is what the data is. That is it if your component has use effects or try catch in order to fetch the data and do error handling there, then that is incorrect. You need to remove it right now. That is a single line. How? Let's discuss. Right, the biggest problem is fetch everywhere, different error handling per component, cache invalidation by guessing, type divergence from the API, etc, etc, etc. You need to have open API clients for your services, and you need to have a code generator which does one thing. One code generator, one typed API client, or I mean one typed API client. Basically, it's a one folder that has all the API calls for you, right? Then query key follow a factory pattern, and schema validates at that boundary. That's it. If that generated folder then tell this is the schema, then that is the schema, right? If that is not working out for you, fix it. Have open API specs for all your services, and have a code generator which generates React hooks in the case of React, or any other framework that you are using. Basically, it generates the API calls for those frameworks. What we want to do is, if we have this, what we'll get is this, right? For query, we'll get a single pattern. For example, if we have use invoices, you can just call this function use invoices. That's it. What this function returns is this. It returns data, is loading, and error is error, or whatever the error is. If you can get these two things from any function call, right? Be it a query, be it a mutation, and it really doesn't matter if the backend is REST, SCOPE, GraphQL, gRPC, anything else. It does not matter. If you have a way to generate code from Open API spec, right? And that generated code lives in a generated folder, and that is not being put in GitHub, right? That is being built on each build, right? And that is deterministic. That does not change. It gives you the same output every time. And most importantly, your components do not use effect or use state for anything. These things, data loading error, gives you everything. And that the hooks that we bring, right, use query in this case or use mutation here, right? If all of the cache invalidation logic, everything is handled by that generator, then and only then you have data layer discipline, right? And if you can do that, believe me, your AI won't care. AI will just care, okay, what is required. Maybe I want to create a new transaction, maybe I want to create a new order. What is the, is there an API for creating that order? Okay, use create order is that API, right? AI will just fetch that function and call that function by its type definition. Even AI does not care how it's implemented. It's the backend services job to give us the correct types and correct implementation. That is it. That is how strong your separation of concerns should be. Your component's concern is not to handle fetch. Your component's concern is not to handle its error cases. Your component's concern is to call the API. And in case there is an error, show the error. That is it. Your component's concern is to just render things. If you can do it, then you have a good data fetching. Cool. Meet you in the next episode, which is about states.